This is the news segment from the Roll for Crypt podcast, a podcast all about your favorite board games and tabletop games. If you'd like to hear more than just the news, head on over to wherever you listen to podcasts as we release new episodes weekly on Wednesdays. This week, our guest is a game designer of some of our favorites, as well as leading the new studio, Moon Crab Games, Justin Kemppainen. So, we hope you're ready to either climb some Leviathans or possibly just hear about what other crazy things are happening in the world of board games for the week of March 14th, 2022.
So this is an exciting week because one of the news stories I think we'd be talking about anyway, it just so happens we have the guy on the show here to really give us the inside scoop. And that is as I mentioned, this founding of this new studio, Moon Crab Games. And I would love to just give the floor to you for a minute, Justin, and tell us about the inspiration for this company, how it got started, and what your guys' plans are for the immediate future.
Yeah, I'd be delighted to talk about it a little bit here. So, Mooncrab Games is a new board game studio founded by three industry veterans. There's myself, Justin Kemppainen, there's Todd Miklich, and Sam Shimoda. We are all former members of Fantasy Flight Games and Z-Man Games. We formed the most of the Z-Man Games management team for the past several years. And last fall, there was a unfortunate turnover that happened at Z-Man Games. A good majority of the staff left or was laid off, and we ended up all just being free agents. I was one of the first to go, just for various reasons. And I started the day after I finished up there, I started working on a design myself. It had been a little while since I'd done core design. And I was feeling fresh. I was feeling energized. I had the inspiration for it. And I started working on the prototype that would eventually become the game Leviathan Wilds. And so after I worked on that for a while, I started talking to these two, and we started talking about how, like, okay, what's the possibility here? What could we do? Is this something that we could actually make something out of? Could we make a real business and create this product to support that business? And as time went on, things just kept going really, really well. The game was well received by playtesters. We were able to keep just working on it and iterating and improving it to the point where we were comfortable not only forming the business, but having this plan for an announcement where we have it available right away to play, so people can be like, hey, I love this or I hate this. Either one's great. Tell us what you think, and we're working to improve it over time in advance of a crowdfunding launch. And I mean, that's kind of it. Right now, we're just three dudes who are working on what we feel like is a really cool game, and that's all of our focus at the moment.
Yeah. How has it been so far in terms of, do you feel, is it freeing? Do you feel like you can kind of do whatever you want right now? And is that exciting or maybe a little bit intimidating?
It's incredibly intimidating, partially because we decided to go the self-funding route, which is more or less to say almost no funding, because we weren't, high octane business executives in Asmodee. But freeing, definitely, because by the same token, working for a company like Asmodee has a lot of bureaucracy and restrictions. It's almost like working for any major corporation. I'm sure a lot of people can sympathize with what that environment is like. And so, we were in management, and we probably spent a good 10 to 20 hours a week just doing meetings, just going through red tape and bureaucracy, and like occasionally poking at products and projects and making them as good as we possibly could. And of course, I'm super proud of all the stuff we made at Fantasy Flight Games and Z-Man. But now it's like every day is filled with, how do I focus on this one thing? How do I make this one thing better today? What can I do to get people to think it's as cool as I think it is? And while terrifying, it's been so liberating.
Yeah, that's awesome to hear. There's we've watched a couple of documentaries that have come out in the last few years about game designers, and the two that I'm thinking of, and one is called Game Master and one is called the Game Makers. I think that's what they're both called. They have similar titles, so I hope I'm not getting confused. And they both focus on like really independent designers. And I've always kind of been interested to see if someone would make a documentary or write more about the side of things like the Fantasy Flight and the Z-Man, where it is more of a larger company where people come in from day to day. And I don't know if maybe that's not even something. It feels very secretive to
Yeah.
me. It feels like
I,
a Willy Wonka.
I think that's sort of part of the point. I don't think
Yeah.
when you get to that point, the companies don't want you to know anything.
Right.
Yeah, well, there's so many. I hate to use the $10 business term for it, but there's so many stakeholders beyond just who you see, like just who's in your own department and even your own studio. You've got distribution partners, you've got sales partners, you've got retailers across the world who have certain expectations about what you're saying and what you're doing, and it just becomes a lot easier. Oh, you've got a legal department too that's telling you, what to say and not to say, and you've got licensors, especially if you're thinking about FFG. You have to be really careful about that, and so it ends up being so much easier to just clam up and occasionally announce and release products. So, like, if you want some hints of what it looks like and can kind of read between the lines, the Twilight Imperium 4th edition documentary that Shut Up and Sit Down did, you can see a little bit of what life is like in that environment. If you can kind of make a couple of guesses about what some of the statements mean, and I won't say any more than that.
Okay. Good tip. Good tip. I like that. And just one more question for you about specifically Leviathan
Yeah.
Wilds. I'd love to hear maybe just a little bit more about what the game's going to be like. And I don't know is there any plan do you have any idea of a launch date for it or anything like that, or too far
Yeah,
off?
so just the very brief synopsis is that Leviathan Wilds is a cooperative tactical game about climbing massive creatures. You, the players, play as a crew of expert climbers who are tasked with exploring the wilds and healing these ancient frenzied leviathans that tore the world apart a long time ago, generations ago. So, everybody will always be saying this, so I'll just come out. It's inspired by, or at least covering similar subject matter to Shadow of the Colossus, where you're essentially climbing on these giant leviathans and trying to cure/heal them of their affliction.
If I recall, in Shadow of the Colossus, your curing method is a bit questionable. I'm assuming you actually are using that word as more of a healing terms in this case.
Yeah, so that's one of the big departures from the source material, I guess. Is tonally you're actually rescuing the leviathans instead of killing them. Shadow of the Colossus is a really melancholy game. It's full of sad things. Your character isn't happy. They're in this ancient land for reasons that are full of regret. And every time you kill one of the one of the colossi, this really sad music plays. And as the game progresses, your character just gets more and more like broken and just all this like black threads pouring through their body and stuff like that. So one of the things we wanted to do is we wanted to go for something that was tonally a little bit lighter, something that fits a bit better with a cooperative game, or at least with our experience with cooperative games. In the same sense, like we came from Z-Man working on Pandemic, and Pandemic is ostensibly a game about something horrific happening in the background. But the game itself is much more about the triumph and the working together to try to make the world a better place and to help people. And, this takes a much more speculative fiction, deeper fantasy vibe to it. But we feel like that's just better for what we can do, what we're interested in making, especially in modern times when life has been a little bit more dark the last few years.
Yeah, that's pretty understandable. Yeah, I know. Will and I both enjoyed the Shadow of Colossus game, and I know that it looks like this game I saw has another thing that Will and I are big fans of, which is the Spiral Notebook format.
So it's a scenario-based game, and it uses that spiral notebook as the maps. It's a square grid sitting on top of a big illustration of a unique Leviathan. And what we have available in the public demo right now are just two examples of that. One of them's a horizontal map of a giant turtle, and the other one is a vertical map of what you would kind of think of as a more classic giant creature, humanoid shaped, but it's got really long, spindly limbs and is kind of melting into the ground a little bit. And so you can kind of expect that there will be that level of variety in the Leviathans of the final game. Some of them will be horizontal, some of them will be vertical, some of them will be animal shaped, some of them might just be a giant tornado. That's We're looking to get a lot of variety in both the shape and size and map configurations of those scenarios, but also in just what these things are going to do to you as you're trying to climb and rescue them. Because of course, they're trying to kill you the entire time. They're not of sound mind.
Yeah. I love it. I love the concept. Will, did you have any other
I
questions?
guess what's maybe the usual things that everyone who's listening, like, what is the slated time that we can expect to see this in the marketplace and stuff? And of course, will there be expansion titans or Leviathans? Sorry.
yeah, Leviathans.
One of those
Yeah.
synonyms.
We spent a lot of time deciding what the actual name of the game and the creatures was. But yeah, and anyway, so 2023 release. We are hoping that it would be more towards the middle of the year than towards the end. But especially with logistics and supply chain being what they are,
Right.
it'd be nearly impossible to predict. This isn't our first rodeo, though. We've project managed and produced a lot of games, so we're hoping that will allow us to bypass some of the hurdles that other first-time crowdfunders may run into. That said, we are first-time crowdfunders here, so there's certainly going to be some hurdles that we run into. For the actual crowdfunding itself is going to be later this summer. We've launched in this kind of early access state with placeholder graphic design and other details so that we can get some feedback. We can start to build some interest in the game itself and have people tell us, hey, what is it you like about it? What do you think needs to be part of the experience? So that we can actually make those changes while the game is still not fully baked yet. And we've got great feedback already just in the past week that we're keeping an eye on and making sure that we try to implement as we continue to develop content for it. But I would guess late June, early July, hopefully not as late as August, because we don't necessarily want to compete with Gen Con for...
Oh, I just assumed at Gen Con you're going to be there with like life-size versions or something.
I mean, no joke, it'd be awesome to do like a convention version of like a felt board that's vertically stacked as a demo, so people could actually run up and play on a slightly more like vertical oriented version of the game. But
I mean, that seems perfect. Maybe after maybe that's a stretch goal.
Maybe that's a stretch goal. Maybe that's a couple of years down the line once we have the kind of support that would let us do things like attend big conventions like that and such. You know, we're small, we're scrappy, we're working hard, we're trying to earn that kind of regard though, and it's going to take some time to get there.
Yeah. Well, I'm excited. I'm looking forward to it, and I think it's very cool. You know, just like Corey Koneska kind of split off and did Unexpected Games as his company. They did the Initiative. Like I think it's really fun and interesting to see these big names who I've seen in, underneath other publishers break out and be able to do their own thing.
Yep.
So I'm excited to see what kind of creative stuff.
Absolutely. But like you said before, I just feel so bad. I feel especially in your case, and just like, oh, there's so many things that are not in your control, that hurdles that you shouldn't have to deal with that you are now.
Yeah, you picked a rough time to start this.
Yeah, I think about that every once in a while. But if you'd even gone 2 years back, I don't think I would have had the knowledge base to do something like this. It just that's what the value of working for almost a decade in the industry gets you, is just the ability to see how things function. So I feel bad for the person who's like, I want to do this, and they're the first time creator, and they don't have any real idea of what hurdles they themselves have to go through, even just to make the game. And I mean, this might sound like a total like jerk thing to say, but making the game is kind of the easiest part. in many cases.
Mhm.
It's
Oh, of course, it's the fun
yeah.
part. Then you have to actually do
Yeah.
logistics. There's a reason why, if you've ever played like a lot of worker placement games or stuff, you don't have to worry about income often or like taxes or, oh, that's delivery
hmm
fees and warehouse rental costs.
You're telling me my shipping container is stuck in the UK, isn't going anywhere, and I'm still paying fees on it?
Yes,
Yeah.
unfortunately, you cannot get your products out of our warehouse yet, but you got to pay for that
hmm
space still.
Yeah, yeah. Hopefully things are starting to get better, not worse, right now. But it's
okay. So I'll plug
all
Todd Todd's kind of the main business manager. He's the one who's handling like the accounting and finance. And he said to me today, "Well, on my risk profile bingo card was not China being asked to join with Russia in the conflict."
yeah,
So,
yeah. It's tough. It's hard to predict these things these days.
which
You
Did
really.
did he have the biggest wave of COVID there happening now? Closing the major manufacturing city?
I think it was on the list. It's like, okay, what happens if more stuff happens in China, which of course is the big manufacturing hub?
Hmm.
and
Yeah.
and the biggest one has been shipping and ocean freight is like what's gonna happen here, it costs.
I assume that's Center Square.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. Well, good luck to you, and
thank
hopefully,
you.
it's,
Hmm.
I think you got a good team, and I mean, without even just having heard of the premise of the game, I feel confident in saying I'm sure this will get funded once you guys launch and be successful. And
I've got my climbing gear ready.
yeah, so I'm definitely looking forward. It definitely sounds like a genre that's right up our alley. So. And I mean, I guess not to just one last thing on top of that. Do you do you have like a drawer full of ideas of other games always at any given time, or is it just too early? You're not even you focus on this one and then you move on to the
Oh
next
yeah,
one.
we've got a lot in the tank, and the system, like, we came from a like way back at the FFG, during those times we came from a scenario game environment, and I probably made more than 100 scenarios for various game lines. So we've built this thing from the ground up to be compatible with additional content and probably expansions. Not that we necessarily want to ride the expansion train as far as like FFG does, but there's room to let that game line grow over time. So got lots of ideas for that, got lots of ideas for other games. We see a lot of gaps in the marketplace, some genres that haven't really been served very well, some game styles that could be boosted to a level of approachability and still with the level of tactical and strategic value. um, Time will tell if we're actually as smart as we think we are, but
Awesome. Well, I'm definitely looking forward to finding out more of that. Stay tuned, listeners, and just stay tuned, stay alert for more details on all that stuff. Leviathan Wilds is the name of the game, so put it in your calendar or something. Put it for this summer. But now we will move on. We'll stay in the world of business a little bit. Speaking of other board game companies this time, because there's more board game company acquisitions to cover. Just not that long ago, we talked about the Flat River Group having acquired Greater Than Games. They also made the deal to publish Yellow Games in North America. Now they have also acquired Luma Imports, which does distribution in North America for a number of other publishers like Horrible Guild and Sit Down Games, and another company called Synapses Games, which has a couple games. There's one called Coatl, there's one called Beta, that are interesting, smaller looking games. And then also the company Jasco Games, they do trading cards, they do a lot of licensed stuff. They've got Cowboy Bebop, Buffy the Vampire Slayer, they do all kinds of stuff. They have been acquired by POW Interactive. And POW Interactive says that they intend to acquire more companies and possibly more gaming companies as well. So this is perhaps just the beginning for them. So I'd love to hear from you, Justin, what you think. If you have thoughts about these specifically these companies that we're talking about, or even just in general. Usually when I'm used to see an acquisition headline, I'm used to it being about Asmodee. But Flat River is, they're nowhere near that level. But it seems like maybe they're kind of seeing that strategy working and kind of going for a smaller version of it. Do you think we'll see more of these kinds of board game mergers or acquisitions as time goes on?
Oh, definitely. I would expect that Asmodee will continue their pattern because, I mean, you look at their general business model, and it's hard to say exactly what the Embracer Group is going to do with them. That's their new owner after PAI. So we'll see what that does, but they're kind of built to do that kind of merger and acquisition stuff. So it's what they focused on. It's what they do. But that being said, they're continuing to focus on bigger and bigger targets, bigger and bigger fish, trying to expand their global reach a little bit more into new territories and that sort of thing. What I think that's leaving room for is smaller holding corporations and smaller groups to pick up some of the things that Asmodee really wouldn't be interested in, because it's just not, as silly as it sounds, it's not big enough for them to pay attention to with how they're swinging around their overall value. So the other thing that this tells me, I think, is that medium-sized money is seeing more value in the tabletop industry. So they're trying to grab up the places that they're thinking that they can derive value for their investors out of. So Flat River picking up a couple of places, trying to expand into the North American distribution market that Asmodee is pretty heavily dominant in, especially with the really, really big hobby games, and finding some of the niche in there for other games that are getting bigger and are expanding their reach. The whole industry, I think this is a sign that it's growing. Whether or not you should feel comfortable about it as a consumer, it's hard to say. There's going to be some good and probably a fair amount of not so good on the consumer side of things. But then again, other companies will come in and innovate and provide value in other ways. So hopefully in the end, you'll be able to still get cool things.
Yeah, my comfort level as these stories have gone on over the years has, I think, gradually decreased.
Yeah.
But Will, how are you feeling? What's your comfort level at?
I think I'm slightly more positive. I'm just seeing it more like, because I guess in my head still Flat River doesn't feel like similar to Asmodee.
Yeah.
So I'm like, maybe at most it's like it's gonna be more distributing power challenging them there, when Asmodee felt like they're just acquiring for acquiring its sake. That said, there is part of me that is worried that, like, as usually, hearing about big competitors is always a good thing. But then there's that little voice in my head that's like, yeah, but this could end up like the airlines when they all just make agreements. And in the end, we're the ones who pay.
Right. Yeah. Like ideally it's, you want more competition. I keep thinking about, so there's another podcast that you should listen to after this podcast. Don't stop listening to this one, but called Doughboys, where they review food restaurants. And one of the hosts has remarked kind of jokingly about how, like, since the pandemic, he used to like root for the smaller, like the mom and pop food stores against the big chains. And now it's like he's rooting for just the smaller chains or like the good guys, because the mom and pops are gone. And like, there are no good guys anymore. Like everybody has been consumed and acquired by somebody. And that's maybe sort of what this is feeling like. It's like, yeah, Flat River is like, compared to Asmodee, they're like Robin Hood, but they're still like a corporation. It's just degrees and everything. But
the thing
The
thing I'd be most curious to see, and this is going to get ultra boring for a tabletop gaming podcast, is whether or not the impending increases in interest rates will change how much acquisition happens. Just because if debt becomes a little too expensive, then the value of using that debt to gobble up other companies maybe isn't quite the same ratio. For now, though, like if debt is going to become more expensive, oh, go nuts right now, gobble them up. Let inflation take care of the lion's share of that debt for you. So yeah, like you might see a feeding frenzy sometime in the near future, just with people trying to do this in advance of potential hikes in interest rates.
I couldn't help as you started to. I just immediately pictured. Oh, he's talking about a board game strategy now. When are we getting the board game of this? When everyone has to play as gobbling up other little board game companies.
Hungry Hippos?
Yeah, there you go.
The restoration version.
Yeah, yeah, oh yeah, they should bring it back. I mean, I gotta ask again, since we got you here, we got an insider here. What would you do if Asmodee in a few years says they want to buy you or somebody else? Is that something that you would consider, or
I mean,
does that go against what you want to do?
I mean, our ethos is to make awesome things. That's our business model. That's the thing that we want to embrace forever. And frankly, what we would see as an opportunity is to kind of take an exit strategy if the offer was really high and then just turn around and do it again. Like, I mean, that's how
it.
Sophie Gravel did it for Z-Man Games to Plan B. Sell both of those to Asmodee, and cushy retirement, or make another one. Like, I think there's nothing wrong with that. Like it used to be that was you're selling out type of thing. But I think everyone's like, no, if you can fleece Asmodee for a bunch of money, go for it.
Now, would you be willing if there was some agreement like, we're going to own you, but we won't touch anything you do? Like, would that be acceptable, or is it like too much already?
I think that there has never been a real situation where that has actually occurred. Everybody always says like, oh, we've been acquired by so and so, and it doesn't matter what industry it is. You get that heartrending moment where your favorite thing has been acquired, and for the most part it doesn't seem to change. But if you always look on a long enough timeline, you can start to see some of those decisions that are made in the name of business and finance and all of those things. That's not a bad thing necessarily, but I almost wouldn't trust if that were the case. It's historically very rare for big companies to gobble somebody else up and then increase in the fullness of time what they're capable of doing.
Yeah, as someone who's seen some of my favorite video games purchased by EA, I can say I've seen quickly the business choices appear and have my favorites disappear.
Yeah,
I want to say the exception to the rule might be Psychonauts 2, of all things.
Oh yeah, Microsoft. That's true. Yeah, yeah. There's maybe some hope out there for these things, but yeah, it's the distribution.
It's not something to bet on.
No, I would not blame you at all. It's a little like the benevolent dictator kind of a thing, but it's not even just publishers. It's they bought Board Game Arena, Asmodee, and also Miniature Market. We found out, so it's like. Yeah, both of those are things, or at least Miniature Market, I feel like is still online retailer that I haven't noticed anything weird going on with it. But like you said, over time you'll probably notice these things. But at any rate, we'll see what it means for people like Jasco Games and these other companies that have just been acquired, and how that goes. And if we do start to see more of these acquisitions and these sort of smaller conglomerates maybe start to crop up, it'll be interesting to see how that affects the industry. Another thing affecting the industry, price increases, shipping, manufacturing, all that stuff is an issue. This is a real business heavy episode, but I'm kind of into it. I think it's fun. And now we are going to talk about a pretty big price increase for a pretty big game, Frosthaven from Cephalofair, the sequel, of course, to Gloomhaven that everyone's been anticipating. Initially was on Kickstarter for a pledge level of, I believe, $160. And in a recent update, the designer Isaac Childress announced that they would be raising the retail price. The MSRP is going to be $250. So nearly $100 more than what Kickstarter backers are going to be paying. And, game prices, especially from Kickstarter to retail, can change and increase. But in this instance, this is a pretty high profile game and a pretty big price difference. So I think it's worth talking about. Justin, you have any thoughts on, Frosthaven? Well, I wonder if maybe you are a backer. If this is a game you're looking forward to, and does this feel like something that was inevitable? Does this surprise you, this price increase, or not?
Well, I'm not a backer personally, so I'll preface with that. I think I the backers who are into it must be feeling real good right about now. I read the post that he made on the Kickstarter page, kind of outlining why this ended up being the case, and a lot of it seems like it was derived from just the increase in content. So in that instance, it was okay, just increasing the value that's going into this game, making it better for the backers. If on the other side, the people who are waiting for retail are probably feeling a little bit discouraged, dismayed that maybe now they're going to have to pay quite a bit in order to get it. But um, I think you're probably seeing some effects of shipping and inflation in this, some price increases and such. But I imagine they just kept making the game and deciding that they wanted to add this, that, and anything else to it. And like the original Gloomhaven is still a pretty incredible value proposition. Jaws of the Lion even more so. Like it's insane how good of a value proposition that game is. And I think the thing that probably Isaac was really looking at too, and he said this as much in his message, was trying to support retail and distribution partners. Because if he has to charge a certain amount in order to not lose money to get them to distribution, then they have to still also mark things up so that they don't lose money as well. And that's one of those things like that may be a sign that Isaac is becoming a little bit more, his company is becoming a little bit more big business. He has to consider the needs of his distributors and his retailers almost as much as the needs of his customers too. So I'm not throwing any shade at him by any means, but he's doing a lot of big business now. His game has been number one for a long, long time. He's got the follow up also in the top 10 on BGG, and the follow up, the true follow up, as it were, coming out soon. He's got a lot of people that he has to please, and I don't envy him that juggling act right now. And gosh, increasing MSRP from 160 to 250 that's a lot.
Yeah, it is crazy to me that Gloomhaven being the most popular, like famous, so to speak, in our circles, at least, board game right now. I can't even think of a comparison. It's like if Pulp Fiction had been like for 20 years the most popular movie ever made or something. I mean, it kind of was, I guess, but it's like it's an indie game, but it's also a gigantic, like what I would think of as a quote unquote triple A, like huge monstrous game that will last you forever, has a million minis, and is also incredibly acclaimed and everybody talks about it. But the team is just like a few people. It's which hey, maybe you'll replicate this success with Leviathan Wilds and you'll know what it's like from that side. But it seems like a very unique position to be in. Will, you were a backer, I believe, of Frosthaven.
I did back it because I'm like, oh, obviously we need to try this out and also talk about it on the show.
Of
So
course.
it does feel
You don't need
good.
to explain why you backed Frosthaven. I think people know. But yeah. How good do you feel?
Pretty good. I won't lie. I'm sure the people who bought it thinking that they're going to sell it off to begin with are feeling better
Oh,
because
God, yeah.
I'm sure their profits just significantly increased.
Yeah, that is true. I guess you call them scalpers. Are there that many of that for board? Yeah, I guess there probably are some for this game.
I have to imagine he also
Yeah,
did a
oh,
retail pledge level too, so there's probably a handful of retailers who will get copies.
yeah, right. Yeah,
Oh, that's definitely, yeah, that's got to be probably the best. And I get it just because I feel just the history of Frosthaven, what's going on, and like not even things in his control, like the not divider, organizer issue. What's
yeah.
going on right now? It's not like it came. Honestly, I'm surprised. I'm like, wow, this took quite a while for him to admit, like, yes, we need to raise the price.
Yeah, I mean, is it at any point does this become bloat? Does that word enter the picture that this is like an example of going too far, doing too much. I mean, obviously we haven't played the game, so I can't like really judge it. And I do honestly have faith that they know what they're doing, but
You know what I think part of it is, though? I think it's our own perception. I think a good example is video games. There's often the argument, and I think problem is also where the money's going on the back end, but like how much a game costs for, and like when you hear people like this game is only worth it because it brings me this many hours, and
yeah.
like in our head, if you compare, like, oh, that's a lot, but you think the number of hours Frosthaven is plans to bring to you is significant. Plus, throw in the fact, unlike I think many other things, you can, if you're not sure you want to drop that, try out Jaws of the Lion. It's not an exact 1-to-1, but if you enjoy those core mechanics, I'm guessing you're gonna like Frosthaven.
Yeah, like I mean, if there ever was a game that I would be like, you know what, you will probably get your money's worth for $250, it is Frosthaven. I don't know that I want to pay $250 for it, to be honest, personally, but I don't. It's not like I don't think anyone's getting ripped off here.
Now, the one thing I do, and now imagine all the people who waited, and just last year at PAX Unplugged, they're like, "Oh my god, they announced minis! I got to get those too."
Yeah, a lot of stuff going on on that front. That campaign is launching later this year, I think, too. But at any rate, Frosthaven, it's more expensive if you waited and you really want it. I'm sorry, or maybe this will help some people, convince them they don't need to spend the money right now, and maybe they'll find some other stuff to do.
They're gonna be like, "Hey, I heard you backed the Kickstarter. Want to be friends?"
Yeah. I don't know if there's currently an up-to-date estimated release right now that they're confident about for Frosthaven. I haven't been following it that closely, but I think it's still slated for this year, so we will see exactly how that rolls out. And I assume also Kickstarter backers will get it a decent chunk of time before retailers, or at least most retailers.
Probably.
Yeah, probably. I don't know. It's all speculation. Aren't you glad you're listening to this podcast where I just don't know what I'm talking about? All right. And then, of course, as it seems like we have every week now, there's a handful of new game announcements that I think are worth diving into. Let's start with a new Catan entry, Catan Dawn of Humankind, which we pretty much know nothing about, but it appears to, it's the prehistoric era, they say, and it looks like, you've got cave people, you're trying to build up a civilization from the dawn of humanity, and presumably it will be similar to traditional Catan gameplay, although perhaps not. And then there's also the announcement that Portal Games is going to be co-publishing in America, and probably other regions too, the English edition of a game called Brazil Imperial, which it was originally published by Meeple BR. Not a game that I was on my radar, but I've seen some good buzz for it since this announcement. And supposedly it's like a combo of a Euro game and a 4X game, which I think is an interesting sort of hybrid. Justin, any thoughts on either this Catan game or Brazil Imperial?
So when I was doing a little bit of reading up on the Dawn of Humankind, I think it's been confirmed that it's a remake of another Catan game called Settlers of the Stone Age. So if
you got the scoop,
if this Reddit thread is to be believed, it looks like a Catan Studio staff member actually responded to someone asking that question. So now I don't know a darn thing about Settlers of the Stone Age, so that's. But there you go. That's.
Oh, all right. You heard it here first, folks.
As far as Catan, yeah, they're going to keep doing Catan-related things. It's the name of their studio. It's their whole brand. It's everything that they're interested in doing. So that doesn't come as too big a surprise. For Brazil Imperial, what I actually thought was most interesting about it is that a Polish company is doing the English edition of a Brazilian game.
Yeah, and I believe in Poland they are not the publishers of this game. Yeah, so that does show you how much Portal Games has really broadened their reach and their focus, I think.
Yeah.
Like they've really had a lot of success in North America, which is it's pretty interesting. Will, excited about either of these?
I'll have to see Brazil and actually like take a few turns before I comment on that one. I mean, Catan, it's fun to sit down to if someone enjoys it, but it's not the first thing that comes to mind. The thing I find, at least that came to my head with the Dawn of Humankind, and this is before I knew it was based off of the Stone Age one. I'm seeing a small rise in Stone Age, like in like Neolithic cavemen kind of inspired games. And I wonder if part of it is because original Catan, you're almost colonizers going onto a new land, which is a very common Euro theme in games, which is being questioned right now. And I wonder if we're going back because they're like, it's okay, everyone's at the same place.
Yeah.
Like
Neutral
that makes
ground.
sense. That's sort of like the loophole, I guess you can say, to get around in the idea that where you can still gain territory that is not by removing someone else. Removing a native's territory would be, I guess, be a better way. I was about to say someone else, but no, that's a war game. That's a little different.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I guess Catan, to its credit, although the theme is still questionable, at least it's a fictional place that they made
Right.
up. That is one thing they have in their favor. Yeah, I was a little more excited about Catan when I thought, oh, maybe it's something new, but I guess it's just an old game. But when I feel like they don't, there's a lot of like the re-themes of Catan. I feel like we haven't seen as many in recent years. Just a new title with that branding, which I guess why bother when they they don't need to. But those are going to be something we can look forward to sometime in the near future. And then also a handful of licensed games to discuss. First up, two Disney themed ones, at least now they are both Disney. Smash Up Disney. So we're going to get the Smash Up card game, which originally debuted with just generic zombies and dinosaurs and stuff. And now they have the Marvel version and this Disney one, which is going to have, looks like Pixar characters, Disney characters, the whole works. Or no, actually, I guess there aren't any Pixar characters. I'm just used to thinking of the 3D movies as Pixar, but they're not. they're all Disney related. Then we're also getting a Star Wars Villainous. So what once was Disney villains, you'll now be able to play as Star Wars villains, including Darth Vader, not the Emperor. They're saving him, it seems, for one of their expansions, but several other Star Wars themed villains. And Funko Games also announced a board game based on Rear Window, the Alfred Hitchcock film. So they're really expanding their horizons in terms of what you might think of as a typical title to license for a board game. Now we've got someone here, Justin. You've worked on licenses. What do you think about any of these? Do they excite you? Do they seem like? I mean, two of them are reskins, and one of them is an original from the ground up
Mhm.
work. Does that change your opinion about either of them?
I think that all of them are very, very cool, and I hope that they find people who really, really love them. Smash Up Disney, is this the first licensed Smash Up?
The second Marvel was the
Marvel,
first.
okay. So yeah, that makes sense. It's a great engine for that type of thing. So it doesn't surprise me, and maybe even would consider going back in on Smash Up Disney for the kids, because they would get into that a little bit more than the original Smash Up theming. So I think there's definitely a good audience for that. Star Wars Villainous is a lot of fun. That's almost one of the most obvious connections and pairings, I think, just because Star Wars has such iconic villains. So being able to play around in that is it's really cool. I think they've got something neat there. Rear Window is really, really interesting. It kind of fits with that one's a Prospero Hall design, and it kind of fits
Right.
with their whole vibe of weaponizing nostalgia as much as they possibly can. So, like, cool. Like, I love seeing all kinds of different games, reskins that are clever and new ideas that are brand new.
Yeah, I that's the one that I'm certainly most interested in. Because I do feel like there's a lot of movies that people don't think of would make a good board game, because you typically with a board game you're thinking, well, what's my action that I can do? I fight the other person or whatever. I think there are a lot of examples like Rear Window where maybe it's not totally obvious at first, but the theme is interesting enough that it could lend itself to a unique gameplay style.
Well, from the photos of that one, I don't know if you look through it, like one of the parts is director. So I actually think you're not in the world, you're actually in the filming of it, which I'm really curious then how it's going to work out.
Huh. I don't know. Yeah, it looks like maybe it's like a little meta nod to it, but it certainly looks like at least some part of it is a genuine murder mystery thing.
It
But
could be maybe that they're like the game master in some weird way,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
instead of the usual 1v
I was.
all.
They said it was cooperative, and so I was getting a little bit of almost Mysterium vibes when I was looking through it. So maybe they're. I don't know if that means it's going to use association mechanics or not, but yeah.
It seems like the director, who's literally, you have a slate that says Hitchcock on it, like maybe sort of like the ghost, like they're directing they decide or assign
I like that.
the
Yeah,
clues.
because in another thing, there is a yes token with an arrow. And I can just imagine, like, so it's almost like you're playing as the characters and you actually need to find out what's going on while the director's like trying to be like, yeah, just move to the left.
Yeah, no, that's pretty interesting. And I mean, Will, you're the Smash Up guy, but I
All
think
right.
you didn't love the Marvel set, so, and I know you don't love Disney stuff, so it's this.
Well, okay. So here are the things. First off, I think with the Dark Side Villainous, which I'll get to talking a little bit more about, we can guarantee there's a smash up Star Wars in the works.
That
At
sounds
this
likely.
point, I think that's a safe bet. The first thing I couldn't help but notice is, and maybe going back to when we were talking about big companies and them directing, in Smash Up Marvel, and even more so the original Smash Up cover art, all the characters are sort of looking like they're in a brawl with each other. This is not the case for the Disney one. They all look like they're on the same side.
Yeah, they
And
don't want to
I
show
couldn't
them
help.
fighting.
Yeah, which is something I couldn't help but notice.
So that
like I
disappoints
said,
you wanted to see Olaf punching Elsa
a
in the
little bit,
face?
because that's what Smash Up's about. It's just the silliness of seeing. I mean, there is a princess group in the original Smash Up. That's a joke on all the Disney princesses. You know, there's when Star Wars comes, there's a joke on a Star Wars group. It now seems the joke of the copyright ones are like, well, we also have the copyright ones in there.
I mean, to be fair, I'm thinking, like, you look at Smash Brothers, they're not all hitting each other on the cover, right?
It's more because the other ones had that. I couldn't help but notice.
Yeah.
But that said, I'm also like, if someone isn't excited because they get the chance to play actually Big Hero 6 in this game, why should I be mad about that? That's not going to ruin the game somehow unless there's a mechanic issue, in which case that's not Big Hero 6 fault. That's just the problem that they now can take a base with one card and win in a turn or something crazy like that.
Well, I don't expect it to upset you, but I do wonder if this is a point where you go, no, I don't need this one, or do you say I have the Smash?
Have you met me?
I have.
If there's a mechanical difference.
I was hoping this might be. I was going to find a way to break you out of your spell.
No, the bigger problem is I don't think I could fit this in the big box anymore. Like the whatever, because they don't. It's not the bigger geeky box.
Oh god!
Like I think I've filled that up.
Time to make the biggest geeky box, I guess.
But no, because if I ever did bring this out, and if someone was like, "Oh my god, I can play Frozen," then I'm gonna be more than happy, because that makes things a lot easier when you get to play things you like.
Yeah.
I'm only gonna stop you if you say, "Can I play robots again?" I'm like, "You've said robots for the last 5 times we played this game. That group needs a rest."
Yeah, fair enough. My niece loves Frozen. When she learns how to play a card game, maybe she'll want to play this one.
There you goes.
All right. Well, yes.
I do want to say one quick thing about the Villainous.
Mhm.
I am a little disappointed because personally with the Marvel one, I love the shared, not nemesis. What do they call it?
Villains, whatever
Villain
or the
hero
heroes.
deck. Yes, it sounds like this one they're going back to each one has their own.
Yeah,
Which makes more sense. I just thought there was a bit more fun interaction in the Marvel one.
Yeah.
My own.
yeah. Well, we'll see. I'm curious if they do, because the Marvel one was pretty different. So I wonder if this one maybe will even be interchangeable with the Disney version. Because Marvel, you really couldn't mix.
Yeah.
different kind of a system, but maybe they'll do a different sort of a thing for this one too. All right, so look forward to those games coming up in the near future. Do us a favor, like this video, subscribe to our channel, or if you really like us, you can support us on Patreon. Become a high roller today for exclusive bonus content. We also have a podcast now. You can check that out at rollforcrit.com/podcast. Weekly episodes with special guests you definitely want to listen to.